These are the absolute worst jobs as an orc. Runt herd. Managing workers is hard. Managing workers who panic at shadows, work with exploding machinery, and answer to supervisors who solve problems by hitting, that's a runt herd's entire shift. Orcs are a biologically engineered species created by the Old Ones millions of years ago. Every role in their society exists through genetic programming. Some orcs sprout as mechs, instinctively understanding machinery. Others become pain boys, compelled to cut and experiment. The rest become boys, warriors built for fighting, shouting, and destruction. But someone still has to do the boring work. Hauling ammunition, cleaning workshops, crawling through machinery that's too small, too hot, or too unstable. Problem is, orcs are genetically incapable of tolerating this. Tasks that don't involve smashing, punching, or shooting trigger instant frustration. Their biology simply rejects it. Enter the Gretchen. Smaller, weaker orcoids created specifically for grunt work. And where there are Gretchen, there are runt herds. Orcs who sprout with handler instincts. Their minds just develop the biological urge to corral, direct, and beat the smaller orcoids into doing work. Don't choose it, can't avoid it, just happens. Here's how a typical shift goes. A mech shouts his gun needs cooling fluid now. The runt herd has 30 Gretchen. 29 bolt to the yelling. The one that stays gets crushed when the gun barrel swings around. 5 others panic and crash into a fuel barrel. 3 get trampled. 1 triggers a chain reaction that drops a ceiling plate. The mech blames the runt herd for everything, and this is just Tuesday. Most runt herds are missing fingers from slamming cage doors. Burns bubble and crack up on both arms from shoving Gretchen back into the boiling machinery. They walk with limps from getting trampled when 50 Gretchen stampede at once. Other orcs won't help when a runt herd is down since they're too busy looting the scraps or starting their own fights to bother. And a weakened runt herd is just an opportunity to snag his grots. This setup can't really improve. The old ones designed it this way millions of years ago, and it works exactly as intended. Messily, dangerously, but functionally. The supply never runs out because, well, reproduction. The casualties never stop because biology never changes. This has always been true. This will always be true. Brewer. Now, if you thought managing panicky workers was bad, try doing it while standing next to barrels that explode randomly and customers who think throwing you into the fire is hilarious. Orcs love their fungus beer. The booze keeps morale high, keeps fights going, and fighting pumps up the whack psychic field, that collective energy that makes orcs' technology work and keeps the horde unified. Stop the supply and weapons start jamming, and the war boss starts looking for someone to blame. Some orcs sprout with brewing instincts built into their genetics. They know how to chop fungus, heat mash, and keep vats bubbling without being taught. Same as every other orc specialization. The everyday reality? Brewers haul 5 to 10 heavy barrels per shift, mix bubbling ingredients, and dodge swinging bottles, mugs, and fists. Steam, fire, and explosions are part of the routine. They last an average of 6 months before getting scalded, crushed, or drowned in fermenting fungus beer. Most lose fingers to boiling kettles, skin on their hands and forearms turns leathery and scarred from constant burns, the smell of scorched flesh becomes normal background noise. The unlucky ones fall into vats and get brewed into the next batch. The other orcs drink it anyway. They say it adds flavor. Call it extra meaty brew, and nobody considers this a problem. The war boss might even compliment the improved taste. Other brewers see this happen and just keep working. The compulsion to brew overrides self-preservation. Not that orcs cared much for that anyways. A brewer might even stir vats with his remaining good arm while the burned one hangs useless. Bigger wogs means more orcs drinking faster, which means more brewers dying messier. The scale changes, the job doesn't. This pattern has repeated across millennia without variation. Mech's assistant. You'd think workshops would be safer than battlefields, right? In orc society, they're deadlier. At least on the battlefield, the explosions are supposed to happen. Mechs are orcs who sprout with an instinctive understanding of machinery. They build tanks, robots, guns, and vehicles from scavenged scrap that somehow work despite leaking fuel, misfiring, and falling apart mid-use. And with all that building, they definitely need assistance. Mech's assistants come in 2 types. Spanners, lesser mech boys with partial mechanical instincts who understand tools and basic construction, and Gretchen Oilers, smaller orcoids with no mechanical instincts at all, just the misfortune of being small enough to fit into deadly spaces. Both keep the workshop running while absorbing most of the danger. Assistants carry hot metal plates that sear through gloves, hold sparking wires that shock up to the shoulder, push buttons that clearly shouldn't be pushed because the mech insists it'll probably work, engines backfire 10 to 15 times per shift, fuel leaks ignite underfoot, welding sparks land on explosive materials. Sometimes an assistant gets welded to the project because the mech forgot they were holding that part. The mech just works around them until they can pry the assistant loose. A successful day means the weapon fires 3 times before exploding. The assistant only loses 2 fingers. The mech calls this good progress. Even standing still is dangerous because anything can explode at any second. Most assistants end up burned, electrocuted, or flattened by falling machinery. The mech considers an assistant a success story if they survive long enough to become spare parts. When an assistant finally dies, the mech strips any useful arguments and tosses what's left into the scrap pile. Waste not. Orc engineering doesn't include safety features. Never has, never will. The old ones program mechs to build functional weapons fast, not build them safely, and orc engineering fundamentally cannot function without someone expendable holding the dangerous parts. The casualties are acceptable as long as the gun works when it's done. Weird Boy Minder. Most jobs have occupational risks. This one has. Your boss randomly explodes and takes half the battalion with him. Weird boys are orcs who blast psychic energy like walking apocalypse machines. Their skulls act like funnels for whatever WOG energy the surrounding orcs generate. Put enough orcs into one place, and the psychic buildup releases wherever it wants, up, down, sideways, straight into friendly ranks. And someone has to make sure that doesn't happen, and this is where the Weird Boy Minder comes in. Weird Boy Minders aren't a special cast. They're just regular orcs, usually tough boys or a knob, assigned by the war boss to keep the weird boy from accidentally vaporizing the entire mob. It becomes unavoidable the moment the war boss points and says, "You, watch the weird boy." The minder knows exactly when the weird boy is about to overload. The telltale head glow, the crackling energy, the air getting hot and staticky. So, minders dodge up to 40 psychic blasts per hour. They hold bottles, pipes, or scrap metal pieces to distract their weird boy. They shout, push, and occasionally smack him to keep focus on the target. 1 second they're steadying the weird boy, next second they're dodging a beam of energy that could melt armor or flatten a tank. Problem is, sometimes there's nothing they can do about it except hope the blast goes forward instead of sideways. Shockwaves throw minders 20 to 30 meters across the battlefield. Sometimes they land in one piece, usually they don't. Most minders die with perfect situational awareness. If only they had smacked the weird boy sooner. This is just how it works. The old ones designed psychic orcs to channel battlefield aggression into destructive power. The side effect is constant risk of detonation. Minders are the compromise. Lose 1 orc managing the psyker instead of losing 50 when he explodes uncontrolled. Pit Fighter. Now, if you think watching your boss explode sounds bad, at least the explosion is quick. In the fighting pits, death comes slow, and it comes often. And worst of all for orcs, it comes without glory. Pit fighters aren't a special cast like mechs or pain boys. They're boys who got unlucky, too scrappy for regular mobs, too small to impress, or caught on the wrong side of a challenge. The war boss points and says, "You, fight me for teeth. Career decided." Fighting pits are massive craters dug into orc camps, space hulks, or conquered fortresses. Orcs gather to watch, bet teeth, and shout while fighters brawl with choppas, power claws, or bare fists. No rules, no mercy. Fights end when someone yields, dies, or gets dragged out. Usually dies. The pits serve multiple purposes: entertainment, settling disputes over loot, selecting new war bosses, weeding out weak orcs, all of it lethal. A typical week is like fight a rival knob on Monday, fight 3 grots and a squig on Tuesday for entertainment, fight over a disputed choppa Wednesday, fight a captured alien Thursday, fight whoever the war boss thinks would be funny Friday. Survive all that, and the war boss might throw you at a beast just to see what happens. Injuries pile up fast: broken bones, lost teeth, missing limbs that the pain boy fixes with crude bionics that half work. Knobs wear their pit scars as trophies. Lower ranking fighters just accumulate damage until something critical breaks. Or worse, it's boring. Orcs hate boring fights. They're built for wogs, for conquest, for the rush of a proper scrap with actual stakes. Pits are just repetitive. Same arena, same faces. Other orcs don't even respect you the way they respect warriors. You're entertainment, a sideshow. The war boss bets on you like you're a fighting squig. The really unlucky ones get stuck on prison planets or space hulks converted into mega arenas where fights happen dawn to dusk. Just fight, survive, heal enough to fight again. Some fighters have been doing this for years, covered in scars, half bionic, too damaged for anything else. Every orc settlement has a pit. Small camps have crude circles. Major strongholds have stadium-sized craters. The job exists because orc culture demands it. Might makes right, and the pits prove who's mighty. Fighters keep dying because that's the point. This has always been true. This will always be true. Pain Boy's patient. The good news: surgery is available. Bad news: the surgeon learned by pulling things apart. Putting them back together was always optional. Pain Boys are orcs who sprout with surgical instincts. They feel compelled to cut, modify, and experiment on injured orcs. The old ones built Pain Boys to keep orc armies functional through field medicine and crude augmentation. Patients are just unlucky orcs who end up on the operating table. Some get there through injury: a missing arm, a crushed leg, burns from an explosion. Some get grabbed because they're nearby and the pain boy needs to test a theory. Some volunteer because they think extra arms or metal plates sounds like improvements. What they don't know is the pain boy has been wanting to test if orc lungs work better upside down. Guess who's finding out? Pain boys poke organs, move bones, attach random bionic limbs, or pull things out just to see if the patient still works. They might wire nervous systems into experimental weapons, or replace missing pieces with parts stolen from someone else, making waking up after surgery a gamble. Maybe the patient has an extra arm, maybe a leg's on the wrong side, maybe they're missing something important that the pain boy decided wasn't necessary. One orc went in with a broken jaw and came out with his digestive system rerouted through his belly button. Still worked, sorta. The pain boy called it an improvement. Most orcs only survive one session. If they're lucky, they get patched up well enough to fight again. If they're unlucky, they become a learning experience. Either way, there's always fresh casualties coming in. Injuries pile up wherever orcs fight. Every battlefield, every supply camp, every shattered vehicle provides new opportunities for experimentation. The system works because orc medicine advances through trial and error. Mostly error, and casualties are infinite. Pain boys will keep cutting as long as orcs keep fighting. The patients don't really get a choice. That's all we have. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more 40k.